Welcome to the On Pointcast. Today I'm speaking to entrepreneur James Asquith. James is founder and CEO of Global Airlines and the first man to travel all of the 196 countries in the world. We are speaking about not holding back in life and creating really ambitious results. This is the On Pointcast. Welcome. Thank you for landing on the On Pointcast airport.
Great to be here.
So to say, great to have you here, and thank you for your time already.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks
flying in and out today. So thank you, and our first English guest. So this podcast will also be in English. James, let's start off with for the people who don't know you. You're the youngest person to visit every sovereign country in the world, 196. As I'm informed.
I think I've been beaten on that record
you're beaten
now. Yeah, I think I've been beaten.
Oh, let's stop this podcast.
Oh, let's. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, I think I'm still the youngest man to have gone to every country because they then put genders on it. So yeah, but I don't really keep.
It's
too
really
much track
equal
of it.
now.
So
the first man.
But I think I still have that record.
Yeah, good.
But yeah.
Great. Yeah. So that was very interesting to invite you. That's one. And I really, of course, I've read your book, Breaking Borders.
Do you need a refund?
Not yet. Let's discuss. But what I really loved in your book was you're speaking every country, but also the lessons you got, because the starting point of the book was actually the best part. No offense, for me, was the introduction, where you said.
I thought that too.
Yeah. Afterwards, you should have stopped.
No.
But in general, what I liked was you start with a quote. After you lived your life. Let me rephrase this. The life you have led doesn't need to be the only life you have. That really stuck to me when you wrote that down. I said, okay, you can live multiple lives. And of course, the context of this podcast is speaking with people who are creating extraordinary results.
Yeah.
But it's not only your travels, but it's also as we can see, the company you started, Global Airlines, which is a huge ambition you have, because I never met a guy since today who started a aviation company, and I'm really curious what drives you. And let's start off this conversation about, okay, one day you decided, let's go travel, let's visit all those countries, and you wrote about I felt captivated. Captive. Can you share for the people what drives you to start traveling that amount of countries?
I don't know. Honestly, it's something that a lot of people ask. Did I plan it? Did I want to do it? And no, the answer was not really. I wanted to go into investment banking. If you ask my best friends that I've known for 30 years, they will say that actually what I'm doing and where I'm at is exactly where I said I would be when I was 10 years old. I said I wanted to go to every country. I didn't say I wanted to go to every country then. I said I wanted to work in investment banking, make a little bit of money, and start an airline. And so I made a school project when I was 8 years old that was called Global Airlines. So the name was there since I was 8. My dad was a pilot, my mum flew as well, and so kind of had the aviation bit in me for a long time. Did aviation financing in banking as well. And it was always going to be kind of the biggest, and the A380 from, I remember looking at the aircraft coming off the production line in like the 2012, 13, 14 area. And I was like, that's where I want to get to. So the traveling just kind of came out the blue. I think I was going through the motions of after school, going to a good university to ensure that I would get a job in investment banking. I went to London School of Economics, which was the biggest waste of time of my life. I mean, I learned nothing there. Really, I didn't. It was just how hard can you make economics and maths to prove that you can do things that are difficult. But there's not one thing I learned that I use in my everyday life now.
I hear it a lot.
But it's not me saying like education's a waste of time.
No.
Because actually the stuff I was learning when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 in school was useful stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it's little things about like, oh, there's a cumulonimbus cloud in a geography class. You could actually use that. I'm never going to use macroeconomics that I learn in my everyday life. Even in banking, I just would never have used it. So I started with that, went to LSE and wanted to go into banking. But after my first year, my two best friends wanted to go volunteer. We went to Vietnam, and I remember it really, really well. I went to a travel shop on Regent Street in London, and we're buying, the backpacks to go. And I remember the guy in the store said to me, he said, "Oh, you should get this one because it will last you for years."
Yeah.
He said, if you buy that one, you're going to pick up the travel bug. And I said, no. I'm just going on this trip to Southeast Asia. Then I'm back, and I'm just going to kind of sit down and focus. Yeah. 2 weeks after getting back from that trip, I booked my first one-way flight. I think I went to Rio de Janeiro and just kind of went from there. Yeah. And I never really turned up to the rest of university for the next couple of years. I got there just before exams at the end of the year, did what I needed to do on them to get my checks, and that was it. So I spent most of that time traveling, and that was the best education I had, because I was young, I was naive. I mean, the quote you say from the book, I can't even remember that. That is a different lifetime ago. But it's ironic that is the quote because of it.
Because you actually speak about a planned life. So I'll be born, and then I'll study, and then I'll get in investment banking. So how life should be. Yeah. But somewhere you write, and you spoke about feeling captivated in that life. What triggered you to okay, let's travel and keep traveling? Because how I read about you, or how you write and how you speak, is enormous targets.
Yeah,
because I don't know any, as I said, people who let's start a flying company.
Well, I guess it's something that I had that I'm used to a lot. Is a lot of people said, "Oh, going to every country is impossible." I even remember when I went to the last one, so I've been very used to it for a long time. When I went to the last country, there was another, not Guinness World Records, who's obviously considered the authority on world records. There's another one, I forget the name, it's called like worldrecord.com. Yeah. And they reached out and they said, "Oh, we're giving you a world record." And I remember there were some people saying or writing on the internet, like, "Well, it doesn't really count because until Guinness say it, it's not real. It's not valid.
It's a B brand."
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so I remember submitting all this evidence to Guinness. It took like nearly 2 years, because I thought you just send your passport with the stamps. No. Yeah. You need way more evidence than that to prove it. So there's no doubt. So they asked for more things, and I just kind of had given up. And then randomly, about 2 years later, a Guinness World Record certificate comes through the mail for me, and I was like, "Oh, holy shit!"
Without any communication.
Yeah. And so, people that were like, "Well, yeah, you claim that you have gone to every country, but is it this B brand website apparently?" And I'm not calling them that because they were great.
No. I said that. Yeah, I said that.
But that is how the public would perceive it, right? Yeah. If you're not you're just that, and that's a sad thing that people look at. But so it was kind of called impossible even then, and so not
people
real.
wouldn't believe it because
basically,
they thought it was impossible.
Basically, and then exactly the same thing with setting up Global Airlines. When you start with the biggest plane in the world, everyone says it can be done. Everyone's an armchair expert in aviation. Yeah. You get your bloggers that sit there that they only make a few click pennies from writing a headline that is meant to be out there, and people calling it made up or a scam. Yeah. After we flew our first passengers to New York, you get headlines saying, "Oh, from scam to success, Global Airlines CEO silences the doubters." But why should that even be a headline? Because if I'm backing what you're doing, the one thing I realized, especially with trying to start an airline with the biggest planes in the world, is you've got to almost have a level of deluded confidence in you. No one buys the biggest plane in the world to say, "I'd like to be bang average." No, you are going to set really high achievement levels that you want to do. And you might
normal
miss some
people
of them.
say it's impossible, and they come from that position.
Of course, and there's so much said about people that will bring you down if you're not on their level, etc. And I'm just kind of doing what I'm doing. And if you don't meet some of those big ambitions, it's great. Yeah. But then you're also going to have that field of people that will say, if you shoot for the stars and you miss, you might hit the moon, or if you miss the moon, you're shit because the moon's 3,500 miles in diameter. Yeah. So you're shit because you missed the moon. It's just pathetic. So, I don't really sit there and kind of, think about how big the task is or what I'm trying to do. But this was a passion for me. And it was, it's a passion that became a business. And, by God, there are a lot of challenges to do it. And they're the challenges that you know on day one.
It's a very conservative market.
But I think everyone that's tried to do something that looked ambitious has all been told you'll never do it. Look at the one that really gets me is I think the guy writes for the Washington Post now, but he used to write for Barron's, the paper Barron's, in 1999. And he drew a graphic of a little bomb, and it had Jeff Bezos' face in, and the headline was Amazon.bomb.
Yeah.
They're failing, they're about to go under. That guy still writes today. Can't make such a big statement and claim to forward your career, whatever it might be, and be so wrong and still sit there and preach and write.
Yeah.
Like, if he had any decency and respect, he would resign and never write or criticize or say anything again.
Or apologize.
Because when you get proven that wrong, but that's the problem, right? When you have the element of people commentating on what you're doing, and then you could take the view of, well, it's great to be talked about, you know, there's no such thing as bad press. Well, no, because, you know, it does affect what people think. And, you know, it's reached kind of, I guess, a point in general with social media, etc., where a lot of people will be scared to try and do something and put themselves out there for fear of what the kickback's going to be from judgmental people. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, I could sit here and I could take one view and I could say, well, people commenting on were we ever going to fly passengers, which we did. You know, there was one guy that said, if he commentated, he said, if Global Airlines ever flies a passenger, especially across the Atlantic, I'll eat my hat. I'll eat an actual hat on my YouTube.
Yeah.
So we made him a hat out of a cake when we flew our first passenger. Said, go on then.
Yeah.
There you go, you prick, eat it.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, oh, I'll do it. And then he just disappeared and didn't do it. You know, at least the common decency respect would be to own, you know.
Yeah, you would, but I think when you share this, people with big ambitions, creating results, there's also a lot of my clients, they get, you always want more. Of life. So that's what I hear when you speak as well. And how do you use that, let's say, feedback or negative communication? Because I can understand with the travels you did, you're never gonna make it. It's the objective people or the objective, the people have, or the observations people have. That's the right word. On you focusing on themselves, seeing themselves never do such a crazy thing, but it's actually, as I'm listening to you, what drives you and move forward, because we need crazy people with crazy ambitions. I guess.
I wouldn't really say any negativity drives me, to be honest. I'm just pretty focused on what I am doing and why we're doing it. You know, I'm not, look, you know, I made good money when I was in banking. I could go and do a load of things to go and sit on a beach and make money if I wanted to.
Yeah. But there's,
you know, an airline is not necessarily the one, you know, airline, it comes if you do the wrong things in the wrong way at the wrong time.
Yeah.
It comes with huge risk, massive risk in aviation, particularly when you're using A380s. So, you know, I'm not necessarily doing this to go and make myself rich, and you know, I'm doing it because there's a big passion behind it and to grow it. But look, I mean, I guess it connects back to the going to every country and parents being pilots. That I love aviation. Like you tell me I'm going to an airport on a long haul flight, I'm skipping there with my bag. I'm so happy. I love it. I love the buzz. And I still think, you know, I'm a bit of a caveman when it comes to stuff with tech, right? AI, I'm a bit of a caveman with all of it. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things I do like about what we do, and the challenges in this industry are just massive, from regulatory to safety, you name it, like they're endless. But there are quite high barriers to get into it. And that's probably why people would say that's a really difficult thing for you to start and to try and do. You know, the size of some of the big behemoth national airlines, it's a big thing to take on. But I also, on the flip side, like that, you know, you could create an amazing product in anything, literally anything. It could be a bakery. It could be, you know, it could be a podcast. It could be anything you want. And you could wake up the next day and some random person has said, you know what, I've got a bit more money in my pocket than you. I'm going to open a bigger, better bakery right next to you. Yeah. And you could be done. Or someone could say, do you know what, actually, I'm going to go to all your guests and say that I'm going to offer them a load of money to come on instead, and I'm going to give them a bigger audience. I'm going to spend a load on adverts, and then cool. And so I like the fact that with the challenges, kind of, we all have it in our own respective industries, right? It's not, oh, this is really hard and harder than anything else. It's hard in its own different ways, but we all face what could be hard. So I like the fact that we have those big barriers.
You like the big barriers. That's a difference, I guess.
I do, but you know, it's kind of very much this old boys club in aviation, let's call it. You know, it's lots of VP of a VP of a VP,
conservative,
not making any decisions. You know, everyone's got this, and it's one of the most frustrating things with it. And, you know, you kind of get, you know, let's say older veterans in the industry that initially when you want to try and disrupt say, oh, you know, that won't work. And then suddenly they start crawling back with respect as you hit those milestones. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't care about getting someone's respect. In fact, if anything, I care less about it because, you know, great. If someone says to me tomorrow that they want to go and put a spaceship on the moon, great, good luck to them. It's not my place to go and say, well, this, and this are all the reasons you can't do it. Because, do you know what? Best of luck to them. Go for it. And so I think that the thing that I do like, and aviation is very odd because everyone does have that opinion on it. It's incredible. Like the innovation to be able to get on a plane and fly the other side of the world. The innovation on an A380 is insane, but it's also incredibly uninnovative as an industry. And you would look from the inside out, you see other industries, how quick they change. We're probably not going to get any new wide body, large aircraft on the market for the next 2 decades.
Because of the conservative.
You know, people have pushed for efficiency gains, for safety gains, etc. And also, you know, your likes of the big manufacturers of aircraft are just not going to take the risk. Go back to the days of Pan Am. And, you know, when they built the 747 at Boeing, the comment on a handshake from Juan, you know, CEO at Pan Am was to Boeing, if you build it, we'll buy it. And Boeing said, if you buy it, we'll build it. And they only had an order from Pan Am at the time. And they took the risk. That would never happen in this day and age because you'd have a whole team and an army in a headquarters doing cost analysis saying, but if we don't sell more, we're going to lose money. The whole,
it's more theory.
Well, even worse than that. It's just admin. And the whole element of this could work, we back that it's going to work, doesn't happen anymore. And so, you know, one of the most interesting points is you look at, it was March 5th, 1936 was the very first Spitfire flight. Single piston, World War II aircraft, everyone knows the Spitfire. March 2nd, 1969, less than 33 years later, was the first Concorde flight. From the Spitfire to the Concorde in 33 years. Realistically, like, you're not going to get that scale of innovation again. So, you know, when I go to an airport and I sit there and I see planes, and that's why I love this industry, you know, the A380 in itself, which is a massive headache of an aircraft as well, has been great. You know, you look at what an Emirates has done with it, with onboard showers and, you know, with a bar on board.
Fantastic.
You know, and you had lots of big fluff and, you know, hoo-ha from, you know, Richard Branson saying that it's going to put bowling alleys on their A380s that they never ended up buying. So that's a different story. But, you know, big promises and, you know, under-delivery. What aviation sometimes is.
But your promise is also a big promise.
It is, but ours is very different. We talk about the golden age of travel, and this is my whole point, is that in an uninnovative industry in general, so look at, you know, the first lay flat seats, you know, British Airways in first class, first in-flight seat entertainment, big things, first closing doors on a seat in business class and the Q suites, they're big jumps. If you now fly on business class on an airline and it's not a lay flat seat, you're like, that's ridiculous. That's unacceptable. Whereas 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. You might get a recliner seat. You might be lucky and get a lay flat seat. What more can be done in a business class cabin beyond some closing doors and a lay flat seat than it is? You know, you're not going to really see, we've had the showers, we've had the bars, but you go back to the 747 in the days and the top deck was, I mean, you know, Air Canada had like a disco up there on the top of it. You know, you had the bar and the lounge. And that was amazing. And you do look at those days of the TWAs and Pan Ams, and to get on a plane and fly the other side of the world to exotic lands you'd never seen, everyone from the crew to the passengers were captivated by it, and it was exciting. And so it comes as standard, you know, yeah, sure, you get, you know, nice wines and nice champagnes and great food. I mean, again, a lot of airlines cut from that, and we're really trying to focus on it. And we're pretty proud of what we offered. But it's kind of just a standard point in terms of, you know, your lay flat's great, your good service and as much as
like
you
a
can provide an
commodity
economy. But it's more the feeling that comes with that. Because if you're going to go on and you're a production animal going through an airport and then on the plane and you like, here's a bottle of water, cool.
That's why I hate flying, being on an airport, waiting, because I'm listening to you and I'm actually thinking, what's the upside he's seeing for being on an airport? Because I hate it, and I love you love it, of course. So that's fine. But I think also that flying has become a commodity,
Yeah.
Because the part of innovation, you're 32 years. When I'm thinking about this, it's okay. It's somewhere it stopped being that innovative, and now you're recreating that perspective. Because I had a client this morning. He said, I went to London yesterday, and he almost had to pay €1,000 for in and out flight.
Madness.
It's madness.
Yeah.
So a commodity is inaccessible.
Yep.
So what's your view on, is this end of market? Maybe, question mark. So we need this kind of perspective, and I feel your drive on this, because actually it's funny to share, when I was preparing this conversation, I asked ChatGPT, Global Airlines, will it work? And he said, probably not. And I said, why? And then exactly what you said was, so it is already...
Four-engine aircraft, being inefficient.
Exactly.
Look,
coming from the older perspective, not from the opportunity.
At the start, when we started buying aircraft, one of the things no one talks about is we own our aircraft. Key difference. When you don't lease it or have debt on it, key difference. Yeah. My plane doesn't lose money sitting on the ground. Well, marginal for certain things.
I get your point.
But it's a huge difference that you could just look and say, wow, four-engine aircraft, gas guzzler. Well, it's not. If you go and if people engage their brains rather than just saying people have retired it. I mean, Emirates have brought all of their aircraft back.
In this market, or in general?
Or in general.
Yeah.
They want more of them. There's a reason why people talk about how great Emirates is, because they've got their A380s and their products spot on.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, large plane equals lots of seats is not the way the aircraft was ever meant to be used. It is a passenger palace in the sky, right? You want to put the amenities and everything you can on there. If you're flying to the West Coast in the US from Amsterdam tomorrow, call it 11 hours. Let's call it an 11-hour flight. You can go and sit on, lay flat, boring, get an apple, get a bottle of water, get a shitty heated meal,
watch 3 movies,
and pay however much it is you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Or if I said to you, and it was my one key non-negotiable, a bar on the aircraft. If you can go and socialise round people as well, talk about where you're going, what you do, you might
people.
Business network, you might make friends. For me, I would even pay a premium for that all the time, because then it's enjoyable. I'm going to the airport and I'm excited, because I'm not just going to sit in my seat, the flight, and have some food that's going to be probably worse than what I could get on the ground. And it is about making that experience better. So, the A380 has a purpose on it. And again, when we started, the first one we bought, the amount of meetings I would have with people saying, oh, everyone's retired them, the aircraft's dead. You have someone that's a CEO of an airline right now who was senior at another airline who said in COVID, the A380 will never, ever fly again. That's the CEO of an airline saying that. Great comment, because actually they've been brought back so much that the supply chain on the aircraft is out of control because everyone's bringing the aircraft back. Yeah. Tim Clark at Emirates wants more of them made. I would like a Neo or whatever version you want, because people pick their agenda, and you look at the numbers of passengers traveling around the world, and it's just going one way. People talk about the growth in India and China and the huge aircraft orders that come from there. People talk about slot congested airports, Schiphol, Heathrow, JFK, and talk about bigger planes. Yeah. The amount of flights that you get from a London to New York, a Schiphol to New York, and you could reduce the flights, save on emissions if you really want to go the 4-engine angle, and actually do the numbers. An A380, if you fill it, is as efficient as a Dreamliner, which is considered one of the more efficient planes, but that would be too much research for someone to do.
So you're also an advocate for a change of perspective. For me as a consumer, I'm thinking, okay, because it's you need to be on the plane to get to New York, because it's efficient, it's time. But I said,
it's just simple. If you could,
you're turning the tables actually.
Okay, so
it can be fun.
If you could have a flight every hour, from Amsterdam to New York, or you could have a flight every 2 hours on a bigger plane that's more efficient. You got less pilots. Which I'm not saying pilots should go, but you've got less turnarounds of crew. Yeah. You've got a bigger aircraft with actually probably more crew on it in general, with all of the flight attendants. But it's just, and the product would be better for you as a passenger as well. And actually the costs could come down. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of chatter again about the need for 4-engine aircraft, but this is the same chatter from your aviation analysts who said that 4-engine aircraft are dead. Make up your damn mind.
But it's old market thinking.
It's not just old market thinking. Can you name me another industry in the world where the analysts and the people that commentate and the bloggers, vloggers of the world, between them all, literally all of them combined, have run 0 airlines. None of them have run an airline. and they own 0 planes. But they're the ones that commentate, and that's the opinion you take.
Yeah.
So imagine you go and watch a sports game, right? You're watching Holland at the World Cup, and then it's half time, and then you've got 4 random people from the street who have never played football in their life talking about what happened. You'd be like, what is this crap, right? I'm not
actually,
taking that opinion on it. You want to have someone that's an expert or has experience in the field. And that's the odd thing about aviation is the people, you would never see a CEO of an airline going and then writing a blog about this is my thoughts. So there's a big disconnect.
Because you're here now. Because that's
happened. Maybe I'll do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start a blog on it.
Yeah,
because I've got some stories. It's just a big disconnect between everything I kind of mentioned, from the manufacturers to the regulation to the safety to the huge numbers at play. Versus how it moves, the speed it moves, and the ability for people to make decisions. I get people that come to me and say, "Oh, I can buy really cheap jet fuel." Well, you can't. It's not that easy. It's not like you have Johnny driving his fuel truck onto the airport and he's giving you a discount on the fuel. It just, there's the process to go through it. So, things that could work. Whereas if that was the case in everyday life and someone said, "Hey, I've got some really cheap petrol that you can have," you might think twice about if it's real or not. But there's a huge process that makes things move slowly and makes a lot of people within the industry quite cynical about how things progress, I feel like, at the same time. So, you take Boom Overture, the supersonic aircraft that they're trying to build. That it's been a while that they've been talking about it. But we had Concorde. We had Concorde before, and for many different reasons, it didn't work. And so you could say that, and best of luck to them in what they're doing. But you look at supersonic, and we're kind of looking at what we already had, and is it innovation?
Is it different?
But does the market in some places doesn't want it? And there's a huge school of thinking of people that say that's great, go for it, innovation, that's what we need, I can travel quicker, and a huge school of people that say it won't work. So where do you lay in the middle of that?
Yeah, well, what I get out of your story is you have the majority big ambitions. The majority will say doesn't work. Because it's a huge commitment you need to have on creating such a thing. What I also get is what's your ambition, saying, because your drive is all over, to get this off the ground, literally. What's your ambition? Because what I get is, this guy wants to democratize traveling. And what I also got out of your book is traveling creates who you're being. And makes things more understandable, and especially with war ahead or not, or all the fights, whatever. What's your bigger ambition creating this? Saying in
honestly,
3 to 5 years?
I don't really. I mean, I've got kind of ideas in the back of my head, but I don't want to necessarily, put it down on paper, even for myself. And the reason
you want to get something out of this, right?
No. I want to improve. I want to fly more. I want to improve what we do, our product, and I want to grow an airline. But at the end of the day, one of the things
for fun you're talking about, like.
But one of the things that it's a huge passion and
sure,
of what I do. But one of the things that I get from a lot of people is they say, "Oh, we love what you're doing with Global Airlines. I hope you're successful."
Yeah.
And I sit there and I think we already are, because define where that final point is where I say, we're successful. If I have 50 planes, 100 planes, am I successful, or do I want more? It's not. So I don't want to put a label on what that looks like, because even more so, you just drive yourself mad. So I think going back to the start, when it got called impossible, they'll never own A380s. Did it. They'll never fly A380s. We did it. They'll never fly passengers. We did it. They'll never fly transatlantic with passengers.
You will never visit the whole of the world. So you did it.
But the point is, if I keep the definition of success and where you want to be to, actually, I think a lot of the time is not your own definition. It's what you think other people will define as success.
But you've seen so much, James, and at this age, you've seen so much. There's something that moves you forward, or is it just doing?
But was Pan Am successful? Yeah, it's the most famous airline ever.
Yeah,
but it went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So is it successful?
Yeah, the same with Kodak. Yeah,
it
was successful. Okay,
it's one of those things that actually never pat yourself on the back for achieving something at a certain time, and also don't berate yourself if you're not where you want to be. And I'm kind of trying to adjust that a little bit myself. My young kid, my boy, and my family, yeah, you know, if my little son is seeing our plane and being like, wow, that's really cool, that to me is successful. That's what I genuinely am working for.
Yeah.
If we fly around for the next few years with 2 aircraft, so be it. You know, we're still doing something that is my absolute dream.
It's made possible. That's maybe the game, because what I love is just what you're advocating. Do it.
But I think as well, a lot of, again, the foundation of kind of how we built this. Yeah. For me, it was always 2 things: product, have a good product on board, have somewhere that someone wants to fly, and the finances, of course.
Yeah.
You know, if everyone thinks aviation and airlines are high risk, and they are, because aircraft are expensive. Yeah. So people will go and crunch the numbers and say, well, look, I'll lease an aircraft, I'll pay this much, you know, debt on it, for example, this much interest on it. And then they think that they found the routes that are going to work, high yielding routes, or whatever their break even will be capacity wise. And then you kind of get on the hamster wheel and you say, well, look, we've got to hit this much load factor because we've got these costs that you cannot just get rid of.
Yeah, and then you're building your own admin.
But also you're exposed to everything in the macro, right? If you know, if the oil price spikes, if the macro shits the bed on you, that break-even point is going to get hit and gone through very quickly, and you're going to be burning money. And it's what's hit most new airlines over the last 30, 40 years. Yeah. And so, again, this kind of revolves around the point of success. I could sit there and say, well, you know what? We've done it. We're in the sky. We're flying passengers.
Yeah,
great.
we've done it.
We've built that credibility. And now I would like to expand really quickly. I'm not saying I would want to do this, by the way. If I said, you know what, let's go and lease a bunch of aircraft. Well, I've also just started a ticking time bomb against potential failure. So I don't need to push growing quicker. I'd love to, everyone would. But, you know, again, what am I doing it for? We've got some routes that we really want to do. We want to build up flying more and more. It's kind of done in the way that the modus operandi was, you know, if you are not necessarily leasing aircraft, you're in a much better position. And the moment I kind of jump into that, so some people, it might be like, wow, that's really great. You know, Global Airlines now has 10 aircraft. Okay, but they're all leased. You know, if that was the case, we've grown really quickly, but they're leased.
Yeah.
And if you're not...
So what's really...
So
we've got,
or we could say, you know, which again is a point a lot of people haven't necessarily focused on, is actually we own them and we're building it in a sustainable way where, you know, we think we're insulated against, you know, the external kind of shocks that will come. Yeah. We don't know what the next one looks like, but it always will come, and it will hit the aviation industry, and then things will get pulled back and the cycle will continue over and over again. And we've seen it so many times before. But, you know, then back to the other point about why I love it with the barriers is technology. You know, technology's great. Again, I am a caveman with it, but it's not changing this industry. You know, people might say, oh, your ticket, like, you know, we're going to integrate AI into the passenger experience. You know, a lot of the time, great, cool, do your own thing. We're becoming a digital airline, some people say, whatever the fuck that means.
Marketing.
So yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, it is jet fuel, it is engines. People will push, you know, the SAF angle as well.
Come from A to B.
And technology cannot, unless we get teleportation of humans, which I don't think I'll see in my lifetime, then it's going to be where it is. And, you know, you can have all of that tech you want. I remember seeing during the pandemic, you know, people trying to push virtual travel. I mean, it's one of the few things that you have to be, you know, if you're going to go to Milan or Florence or Madrid, you know, you want to see it. You want to take in the smells, the sights, experience. The food, the people, everything. And that's what's, you know, coming back to my passion of the travel side, that cannot be replaced. You know, people will go and, you know, take a tour up to the top of the Eiffel Tower the same way they did 50 years ago. And that, I think there's something amazing to be said about that. Yeah. And very largely, sure, products on the aircraft might have improved, but very
better
largely,
chairs.
The airline, you know, the way it happens will still be the same as well in that sense. So,
okay, it's very interesting, James. Let's get back to 2013 when your first travel. As what I'm very interested in is because your drive, I mentioned it earlier, is all over the place. People can can see this, and I experience it to stay in your words. Is the question I have for you is who were you and who did you get to be after those 196 countries? Because you've seen so much, and we were speaking earlier about Africa and my kids talking about Africa. I really learned perspective, how people look, and be way more open because of travel. But you've seen the whole of the world. Who were you and who did you get to be?
That's a great question. Well, I've not been asked that. I mean, look, I was a young kid when I started doing it, incredibly naive, had these kind of big plans of what I wanted to do, but sort of didn't really know how to...
young guy or girl, right?
But I didn't know how to make them stick. And, it was. You go and see the world, and you go to places that, you might see now that get negative rep in the media or whatever it is, and you speak to the people, and you do, and it's kind of, everyone has that same thing. Everyone has the same issues, no matter what corner of the world you go to. Sure, the houses might look different. The infrastructure might be less or more developed, whatever way you look at it. But people still face the same shit. Like, all of us, have it. And, yet there are, everywhere there are arseholes, right? Everywhere. You're always going to find one in any walk of life. But you see that 99.999% of people are genuinely good. They want to help. I mean, I had some crappy situations around the world, and the help and support I got from just strangers and people, it makes you have a really good perception of the world. I had a much better perception of the world and people then than when I work in the aviation business, where it's a totally different perception.
Yeah, if you hear all the time it can be done, it's impossible, then your perspective might change. Yeah.
So I guess it's probably worth reminding myself about from time to time as well, because it was. But it was an odd one as well, because I didn't really have time to kind of stop and think about what it was. And I remember the last country being Micronesia. I remember going through the border of Micronesia, and it wasn't this kind of wow, I've done it. Yeah. I kind of felt a little bit disappointed that the journey was over.
Yeah, no fireworks, here he is. Yeah, but also for yourself, there wasn't that kind of...
But that was it. It wasn't. Yeah. It was for myself.
Exactly.
It was more like, now what? Now what?
What's next?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's something that kind of consumes you for many years. That wasn't meant to be an objective and a task, but then does become one inevitably. Something.
Did you remember the moment you said, "Okay, now I have to do the whole of the journey"? After how many?
I don't. I really don't actually.
Keep going.
Yeah, I don't remember when it was. But I didn't plan it out, and now I kind of see people that want to go to every country and get or break records, and it's very planned in how it was. But even for me, some of my timing was awful. I remember
in what way?
I went to Libya maybe 2 weeks after Gaddafi fell. Yeah. Because you couldn't get a visa to go as a tourist. Libya was famously very hard, to almost impossible as a tourist. Business, much easier. But, I'm 19, 20 years old, at university. Yeah. I'm not going to Libya for business, obviously. So,
But isn't that the game as well, to create something to get in a country?
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of stuff I had to do, but also I had one passport. So some embassies, you had to leave it for a visa for weeks at a time. Yeah. And I think a lot of people that I speak to that have kind of done extensive traveling, they have a passport, two passports, right? One that you can keep there and one that you can still travel with. So, it was, there were some interesting places and timing to go to. And, even then, when I went to Syria, for example, Syria was a totally different country then than it is now. And so things are always evolving. And, I don't really remember that exact moment that I kind of clicked and thought, I want to go to every country. I mean, I do remember thinking, how many are there? And I added it up. And I was
I have to do a lot still.
And I was like, what do you mean Hong Kong and Macau aren't countries, right? That's a waste.
Because not interesting because of the number.
And I'd been there, of course. I was like, that's wasted because it doesn't count on my record. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. So it's very interesting what you stated is people are the same. That's my interpretation. People are the same with the same shit. And you've got assholes everywhere. In a time like this, when America, Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, how do you look at that as a world traveler? Well, how do you see people? Because I think in the common conversation, we lose track of looking at people as who they are, not he's bad and he's good. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I never talk about politics
let's stay away, but just
or religion. So exactly. That's why I don't kind of get into that. But I mean, it's the, I've done plenty of things even well after the record. I went back to Yemen to do work for UNICEF there when UNICEF had kind of almost left the country completely, and it was a huge humanitarian disaster. The problem with it is that there is so much in different areas, so much kind of external need for help and support. And it all kind of, sadly enough, comes down to where the media coverage lays with it. So,
exactly.
you know, and, you know, I found out when I went to Iran, amazing country and amazing people. And you see the similarities there as well. So, you know, it's everyone, and it's no different for us in Europe or the West, right? People will sit there and say, oh God, I hate that government and like that government. And, you know, it's like, well, the whole country suddenly turned around because of different governments in power, etc. And is it the case? Not necessarily. But, you know, some people may or may not have a choice about it. So
is it also your perspective of possibility instead of impossibility?
I mean,
I'm not questioning, but just as a perspective for the viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some elements of the world that, you know, you don't like, but you have to sometimes accept, like taxes, for example. You know, and yeah, people can make a big push to try and change certain things. So, yeah, look, I mean, I think it's one of the ones that you see a lot in coverage of, you know, like conflicts or whatever it might be, where the focus is, rightly so, on the human side. And, you know, the damage that causes, you know, because, you know, people have a different view in terms of government. And, it's, at the end of the day, you know, everyone kind of wants to live and get on with their lives in peace. And, you would think that by this point, hopefully, everything would be a little bit more peaceful around the world. But here we are.
Yeah. Keep the focus on people. That's what I get out of your.
Well, it's, I don't talk politics or government, so yeah.
No, but I don't want to make a podcast about politics or government. It's on results and how you view the world, and that's and bridging this to, okay, this is James. He did big things for normal people in their perspective. Mainly, a lot of people say that's impossible. What's your advice for people looking at this if they're stuck as an entrepreneur or ambitious, young, creating a business, and I want to be like him? What should your advice be for viewers?
Same advice I gave myself when starting a business seemed really difficult. I gave myself a year to live. Sounds really morbid, but I said give myself a year. Imagine you had a year left. You'd probably do things pretty differently. You know, what if that doesn't work, or what if that fails? Do you know what? If you know tomorrow you have a year left, you'll be like, do you know what? Fuck it. Like, give it a go, give it a shot, because I really don't care.
Yeah.
So it was always one of the ones I gave myself early on, which actually I should probably think about a bit more, because, you know, yes, you want to and need to plan for the longer term, but at the end of the day...
But don't forget to live now.
But so many people are scared. You know, people turn around and say, oh, another day, another week gone. But actually, when you flip that perspective and say, actually, that's a day less, a week less of what you've got, it's morbid. But, I mean, everyone says it. Our parents all say it. You know, life goes so fast, but it does.
Yeah, well, we're speaking about your son and my kids. It's moving. Time is moving that fast, but that's also an opinion. And if you flip the board saying... it's a day less. I speak a lot of people someday I will be an entrepreneur as well. Someday I will start an airline. Someday I will travel. But what happens, it's never.
But again, the issue is, and I think, I mean, as I said, there are so many occasions where maybe perhaps I should have given up on what we're doing, where it was the challenges seemed insurmountable to get over. And I say the same thing to people. I say, look, you've got to do something that you are so wildly passionate about, where you know when all angles shit is going to hit the fan, that you're not going to give up. And that's what you should do. Because if you're doing something because you think you might make a little bit of money, or it's short term and you'll do this and then do something else, and it's always something that I kind of look a little bit differently on, maybe rightly or wrongly, but serial entrepreneur is always a weird term to me, because I kind of think, why don't you focus on something that you're really good at, that you're really passionate about, master it, push it, because I guarantee you, if you're doing lots of different things and one of them, you're just going to, it's so easy to then say, you know what, I'll move on to something else.
But whereas, it's also easy to quit, because I know a lot of passionate people, it didn't work out, let's start a new business. They're starting every day. So I get this question a lot. It's very interesting you point this out, is how do you know you're passionate enough? That's a very funny question in my book.
Yeah.
But what's your perspective on that?
How do you know you're passionate enough? Honestly, only you're going to know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love planes. I
Yeah.
love flying. It's you know, it's always been there since I was a kid. So yeah, it's one of those ones that you just know sometimes.
Yeah, and you're very, very young. You knew already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a coincidence if you look at other people? Or
No, I guess it's probably, you know, especially my dad being a pilot and you know, kind of seeing that and being around airports. It's you know, you kind of live and breathe it a little bit. So yeah, you know, the nature nurture question, right? What you kind of see and get pushed into in some ways by your parents.
Yeah. Good. But what's your advice for entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs as well? They're maybe feeling stuck, difficult economy, political taxes, all the shit coming to them. What's your advice to keep going?
I mean, look, everyone's situation is going to be different, right? Everyone thinks about money, of course, and needing to pay for certain things. And if you have more money, you'll be able to be more successful in business or have less pressure, etc.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
a someday thinking as well. Right? Yeah.
But you know, look, there's a totally different, depending on like what each decade you look at, there's a totally different set of challenges. You know, when I was at school, when people would say, what do you want to be when you're older? A doctor, a pilot, an astronaut, you know, those are kind of the things. I don't know if it's still like that in school, but you know, I used to go and pick up golf balls from my local golf course that had the little logos on, and I'd go and sell them on eBay. This was way before it was, and I just, you know, the posters and packaging was not kind of like regulated like it was now, and I, you know, put my time as post and packaging as a kid. I mean, I was like 11 years old trying to make money. I started washing cars when I was 11 years old to make money, and then worked all sorts of weird jobs.
It was already there, just creating.
It was, but I knew that I needed something to, you know, not sit on my arse and be in a position that I could actually then do something.
Yeah.
In the end, I ended up using a lot of the money to go around the world. But, you know,
But it was very, I create the money and then for this purpose.
Yeah, it was something that, you know, I got out there and did something, and you know, now you can sit there if you're a kid, and you know, we can go and choose to play a game and a video game, or you know, like my kid, for example, he loves the dancing fruits on YouTube, and it's got hundreds of millions of views. That person just must log on every day and be like, cha-ching, like more money, just from one video. And like, you know, and I'm not saying become a YouTuber necessarily, but with technology, and there is so many different ways that people could look to get out there and do something. And unfortunately, you know, for a lot of people, it's the same for me, it's a grind and a long journey. My journey goes all the way back to being 11 and saving some money and doing the first step and doing the next step.
Yeah,
and
it's not easy.
It's, you know, it is a long kind of part of it that you're gonna learn from along the way. But everyone's is slightly different. And I like to, in some ways, I like to not give too much advice on it. I think it's just had a weird note. You look very much like Michael Schumacher. When you I don't know why I just suddenly looked at you and I thought, is that Michael Schumacher? My mind went off on one there. So no,
Thank you.
It's are you fast driving cars?
I can't respond to that. Thank you.
Okay. Hopefully no pending speeding tickets.
I've got an app technology. I've got an app to avoid that.
But you know, it's even that, like, go out, make an app, give it a go, you know. I think it's all about adding up those life lessons to make the right decision, right? If you turned around to your family now and said, screw it, I'm going to go and make an app that does this. Yeah. They might say you're a bit mad and we've got 3 kids and what do you think you're doing? Yeah. Whereas, you know, maybe if you're younger and you say, do you know what, I can fail at this, right? This might not be my passion. My passion was not going and washing cars.
Is it still okay to fail? Because that's very interesting. Because
absolutely, but in the right way and at the right time.
Yeah, but
which is an odd
people
one.
want to avoid failing, I guess, because it's made wrong.
It's one of the scariest things why people don't jump into, which is back to my kind of point about give yourself a year to live.
Yeah, that's a good perspective with the end in mind, literally, because there's no urgency to move. If you think you'll be 80, you will see someday, instead of let's make it 365 years and
But the sad thing is, there's so many people out there that want to see people fail, and that's what makes it even more scary.
Why is that for you?
I mean, you see it all the time. It's like, you know, if someone says that they want to start something that's like, you know, maybe a small thing, and I've seen it with many people around me that want to start something small, and they work hard. They work really hard and they build on it. And the moment they start becoming successful by definition, people don't like it anymore. They're like, well, you know what, we gave you support, but you know, you become too arrogant, or you know, your ego's getting in the way.
Now you're winning. We don't want
and so it's one of those ones that it's human psychology to be like, well, they've got that, they're doing well, and I'm not. Yeah. So I can either sit and I can do more, work harder, do whatever it is to get to their level, or I can bring them down to my level. Yeah. And
that's easier, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, with social media, everyone's got an opinion on it. But again, which is something that I'm kind of doing more as well, which is there is so much noise out there. You know, think about, it's like I'm trying to give history lessons here. Yeah, like think about World War II though, right? Everyone would consider World War II as like the worst time to live. Yeah. Now, with newspapers and the media, like look at the UK example, right? Look at London and the Blitz every night, and people would go and hide in the underground, etc. That was a miserable life to lead, right? The British way, you know, kind of from what you read in the history books, said, you know, take a bottle of something, go down there, sing some songs, drink, and it was that camaraderie. Yeah, sure, of course, awful, you know, bombing above your head. Yeah. You'd wake up in the morning, you'd read the newspaper, you know, gets bombed again, and you get on with your day until you do the same that night. Yeah. Miserable.
And hope to live through the next day,
But you got your intake of bad news, bad stuff there on your morning paper, and then you got on with it. And now on your phone, it's negative, this is shit, like more and more bad news. And we're consuming, like think about the last 5 years, well, 10 years, like from the pandemic, you know, to wars going on, you know, everything that's happening. And you look at that, and the amount of bad news that we now get in front of us and consume is terrifying. Yeah. It travels so quickly. There's so much of it going on that, you know, again, I think that you kind of have to have a little bit of a barrier towards, you know, particularly social media.
A delusion, as you said earlier.
Yeah, maybe that as well.
Yeah. But, I'm not afraid. They don't get me terrified.
Yeah, so, you know, it's just...
Interesting.
It's, I guess, the world that we live in, and you
know. What's your take on you're saying it is terrifying, but how I hear you is it's you don't make the noise part of you, and you move forward. You learn to move forward. Yeah. Do you think the people in general, but I want to focus also on young entrepreneurs, because my take is we have to create new young entrepreneurs. But what you're saying is everybody wants to be an entrepreneur because it's freedom and it's blah, blah. No, it's also grinding, keep grinding. But we need those doing people in general. Do you think, I think is the part of comfort and being terrified, terrified, if you will? What's your take on people not doing what they want to do in general? Because there's noise everywhere, as you said.
I mean, look, I don't look differently to it at all. And in fact, there's some elements that I'm like envious of. You know, if I see someone that's kind of like sat on the train going into the office in London, like working a 9-to-5 job, and they might think that they are not happy, right? They might look at me and think, wow, you know, you've got that freedom as an entrepreneur, and like, you know, you can do your own hours. Yeah, but my own hours can be at 2 a.m. My own hours mean my brain doesn't ever switch off. Like they might think that they're stuck in a job that they're doing, and maybe they are to an extent.
It's a matter of perspective.
But also, you know, I'm envious when I see people that might not have that, and it's like, you know, 5 p.m. on a Friday, and they go to see their families, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna have a barbecue, and they don't have to worry about all of heaps of shit that might be coming in from my side. It's a different kind of freedom. I might have the freedom on the surface of the time, but by God, I don't have any freedom. Like, you know, I'm sat there, my son's first Christmas on Christmas Day, and I'm having to do stuff. And I said to myself, I will give it fully to my family on Christmas Day, because I have not had a day off in years. Yeah. And what do you know? There I am having to do stuff on Christmas morning, and I'm furious at it. Yeah. And I'm sat there thinking, do you know what? Like a 9-to-5 would just be wonderful right now. Really would. And so again, it comes back to like we're little speck in a, you know, and again, I know it's probably against the theme of the podcast, because we all want to do more. We all want to succeed. And it's why I think that the definition, if we did nothing else at Global Airlines, we have succeeded. We've done what we wanted to do. And it's just the start, but anyway.
I get
but, you know, that's, sure, like the times where things have been tough, and I like slammed down the laptop and said, fuck this, I'm done. And then 30 seconds later, I'm like, please don't break. I haven't broken the laptop, have I? And I'm like, let's go. Let's get back to it. Yeah. And it takes an insane amount of ridiculous, rugged determination to do it. Yeah. But, will I maybe look back when I'm older and with grandkids and be like, was it worth it? And so everyone's got to ask themselves, is it worth it? Because, if you're doing it for money, that might be one thing. If you're doing it for, whatever it is, it's a point where, people might ask themselves now in this day and age, and I know I don't talk about politics, but they might say, is it worth me going into something like politics? That seems miserable from the outside in, right? You're always there. You always could make a mistake. You're always in the media. And it's like, do you know what? Like, everyone's got to do what's going to suit them best. Yeah. And it's not for everyone. And there's nothing wrong with that. To your point about like having the doers experience, there's nothing wrong with that. I could look back when I started working in investment banking, when I was a young guy coming into it at 21, and I have fond memories because do you know what? Like if I, didn't come into work the next day or whatever it was, or, had a hangover or whatever it might be, like who gave a shit? Yeah. I was a young guy that,
it's part of part of life.
No one relied on me. Yeah. And, you get to that point as being an entrepreneur or a CEO and like, there's, loads written about it. You're kind of like a dog leading itself with your own collar and there's no one to lean on. Yeah. And everyone has their own stuff going on. Everyone has their own issues. And it's why there's so many books written about CEOs and entrepreneurs and being narcissists, because you want to care. And you need to care. But, so I know I even had this chat the other day with some people in my team. I said, I'd love to be able to spend more time face to face talking through things. But the moment I try and sit down for 2 seconds, it's like another end of the world thing that has to be dealt with work-wise. And it does never end. I can't say, I'm going to go and just put my phone down on Saturday. Yesterday, I was in a 2-hour meeting and someone that I work very closely with called me a couple of times. I didn't pick up and I called them back and they said, you've never taken 2 hours to call me back. Like, I thought you died or something. Oh, yeah. And it's like,
that's how people depending on you.
That's not a good thing.
No.
And it's, there is a lot where people say, work harder, work smarter, all of that kind of stuff. We've seen so much of it.
Sounds good,
but it's got to be it's got to be your own personal decision because either way, whatever way you take, you're going to make sacrifice. Like you might sacrifice some elements of freedom. Yeah,
you can't have it all, right? Yeah, that's good perspective to share because you can share everything, so there's no wrong point you made. But this podcast is built on creating results, and what I asking you is also it's a statement for not holding back in life. That's how I summarize you. A statement for not holding back, for what you've did with traveling and starting the airline. And the invitation for the podcast and this conversation is for other people to a statement for not holding back. And that's really interesting because people instantly say, oh yeah, you're the result guy from the Netherlands. You're all, but the financial part is a result of who you're being and what you're doing. And so my statement now would be, don't hold back and create because there's so much to live for. My question for you is, we spoke about being a dad, both of us, and that time travels fast. It travels fast. What's your take on that? Because you're having a huge commitment on creating the things you're creating and being a dad and missing out on. I experienced the same with creating our business. How do you take that with a 5-month-old son? And
it's the tricky thing, and it comes back to I think the first questions people need to ask themselves if they're going to do it with that deluded passion when times get tough. And everyone's guilty of it, myself included, and you included as well. Even if people say no, people always say to themselves, "I'll sacrifice a bit now." Like work really hard for these years.
That's it.
Help my family later on, for example. Like set my kids up. Never happens like that. Like you always push a bit more, a bit more. You might have a challenge and say, now I need to work a bit harder. I say the same to my wife every time. Yeah. Like when she's like, James, like, when do you think you're going to work a little bit less? And I'm like, do you know what? Maybe, hopefully a few more months. And she's like, you said that 2 years ago. And it's, it
is what it is then? There's a lot of talk around balance, work-life balance, a lot of conversation. I don't think a balance exists. I think the balance is the lack of balance.
Well, I mean, look, because, you know, I've met so many people as well. So, for example, when I got the passion to want to go into investment banking, when I was at school, I must have been 16 at the time. So we had a tutor that came into our house at school. He was a great guy. And he was on like page 7 of the Sunday Times, like with his arms crossed. He's like, I left a 7-figure salary in investment banking to go and teach.
Yeah.
And so he had, and I actually genuinely thought, like, you know, when I was younger, that that's a really good idea as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's kind of gone from 80-hour weeks, made his money, he's comfortable, and he's gone to, you know, he's not going to necessarily do teaching for the salary. He's probably doing it to save on the kids' school fees because you get great discounts. But, you know, he's gone there, have a totally different life, get big school holidays and doing something. Yeah. Because I've met enough people that might have worked their asses off, built something, exited, and lost the plot because they've got nothing to keep them going in the morning. And you don't go from all the way up there, that frequency, to I'm retired. You know, I know people in their late 80s who are still working, like doing things, and it keeps them young sometimes. Yeah. But for some people it doesn't. Some people do just want that retirement. Yeah. And so, you know, this tutor, you know, he came there into that environment, and a couple of years after I left school, he killed himself. And, you know, so you kind of look at, he moved from that, this is what I do, I make money, to, and everyone loved him. He was like inspirational, and he was hiding a shit ton behind that. Like he was hiding massive amounts of pain or whatever it might have been. And so it comes back down to, like, again, everyone's slightly different with that. And I don't necessarily think one thing's going to work for everyone. Because, you know, again, would people on paper consider that I was successful if I went and sold out the business, had a load of money in my bank account and went and bought an island in the Caribbean? You know, not necessarily referring to anyone in particular there, but, you know, and, you know, kind of sat there and then was living the life, and the history books would dictate that success.
Yeah, but society would dictate it.
Yeah, but but again, there's just so much more to it. And again, I do genuinely, like, from seeing, I guess, so much. You know, I do look at people that might just be sat there, like with their grandkids, that are able to go to the coffee shop. Sorry, different country definition. I mean, like, literally
drink a coffee.
So drink a coffee. Different. So I forgot I'm in Holland. So, you know, but you know, and that's success at the end of the day, right? If someone goes and comes and speaks to you and says, do you know what, like, I did this in my career, and now I've got this house in the country where I grow my own tomatoes and I sell a few jars of tomato whatever to the local, that's success to them. And if that's to them, then great, because time goes so fast, as you say. On the flip side, you know, would I want to go and say, cool, I banked a load of money and now, you know, I can spend all the time with my kids? Maybe, maybe not, because my son might think that their dad's cool because we fly massive planes around. And, you know, he might not want his dad
being an example instead of sitting at home.
He might not want his dad being just a bum at home talking about the time when he did something exciting.
When he was.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, you know, it's
that's actually sad. It's actually, I spoke to a lot of people on the golf course, and I have to keep this in general. And then they're speaking about how life was.
Yeah.
I was a CEO for, and then I did. And so, what you're doing now? Well, playing golf.
But look at all these, like,
and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's living living in the present from the past.
Yeah. But look at all these like legendary bands like the Rolling Stones, etc.
They keep going.
Oh, I mean, it's like, I mean, they must be like 150 years old by now. But there they are. They keep moving it around on stage, and there's loads of them that have, over the last 10 odd years, that have done it. And it's the same as being a famous professional sports player, I guess. Not that I would know. But you are there, like, hearing like 50, 60, 80,000 people chanting your name. Like, and same, like, if you're on stage playing, how do you beat that feeling? And it kind of comes back to, what's your definition of success? Because if I keep going more, like, if those guys are like, oh, I'm going to keep going more and more, I'm going to sell a few more seats in a stadium, a bigger stadium, that's not the definition of success. But that feeling will be irreplaceable. And that's, you know, again, there's a lot written about professional sports stars that get into their 30s, then retire, and they can't cope with it because they've had that amazing thing, which I could never even imagine what that feels like. To walk out into a stadium having so many people chanting your name, it must be like incredible.
It becomes your identity.
Yeah, but it's something that no amount of money or success can replace that feeling, I guess, for those guys.
Yeah.
So, you know, no feeling will ever replace the first time I saw our A380 after so much work leave the ground and the wheels going up. I was at the other end of the runway seeing the wheels go up, and it was like this feeling of work for years to finally see the biggest plane in the world, our plane, leaving the ground. And I was like, holy shit, and as a tear started to form, the reality hit within about 3 seconds, and my immediate thought when I saw it take off was, nope, put it back on the fucking ground. I don't want it flying anymore. Because suddenly in that moment, the reality and the responsibility hit me.
And now it starts from finish was the emotion, the experience, we did it, or now it starts.
But I mean, when you've got 500 plus people's lives in your hands on that plane, and all you're doing is laser focused on, let's safely get this plane in the sky. Let's get everything that we need from a regulatory point of view, a safety point of view, to get it in the sky. And it's in the sky. Like, it took me seconds for it to hit home and say, this is not a game.
Next chapter.
This is not, this is not just a business. This is a lot of people's lives that, we have responsibility for as well. And safety is absolutely non-compromised in this industry, and particularly with that aircraft, and Airbus gave us, and give us a lot of support with it. And so, you change sometimes your perspective of it, because again, safety is number one in, I guess, any industry, but particularly in aviation. So it doesn't matter how many routes you're flying. It doesn't matter how many passengers you're flying, how much money you're making, how much profit you're making. None of that matters in relation to be safe as you can possibly be. And you know what, that was like an odd moment of reality when that hit me. But I thought that would be my kind of walking into a stadium moment of yes, and it lasted seconds before it was like...
It's the same with after you hit the border.
Yeah, no, very much so, really.
Let's say nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I don't want to downsize it, but it's quite interesting.
Nothing happened at all.
There was no fireworks or a band playing or singing your name. No, and I think that's the fantastic delusion.
Yeah.
You say that because we need people like you in a sense of I don't need the applause. I don't need the positivity. I don't need the tears. Yeah. I keep going because I keep going.
Yeah, and it was, and it was quite nice a little bit in a way, like kind of the loneliness of it. And, it's, when I went to South America, I think I did 5 months in South America in one go, kind of bust around the whole continent.
Yeah.
And as of today and right now, and even at the time, I had a photo album. I think I posted it on Facebook at the time. I had a photo album of no more than 60 pictures in 5 months. Yeah. There's some place I travel to now where I'd take 60 pictures in a day.
Yeah.
And that's great because you can also look at, I've got better memories of it, but actually I genuinely have real memories that I can picture.
And you were really present.
Yeah.
Instead of getting, I'm filming it going up in the air instead of I'm present.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. One question I almost forgot to ask you, thank you for bringing this up, is you spoke about being alone versus being lonely. Could you elaborate a little about that difference? Because people tend to be alone I'm alone. It's a good thing to reflect, to slow down, but also being lonely very quick. Oh, you're alone, that's not good. What's the difference for you sitting on a mountain somewhere, being alone and feeling lonely, sharing this with the people and not able to?
My advice is probably really bad on this because I wouldn't know anymore. I don't get my own time at all, even when I do. But kind of old sayings: fondness makes the heart go. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. Is it? Anyway, bad to use a quote that I don't even know. So but like if I have to go on a work trip and leave my son, my wife, my dog, and minutes after I've left, I'm always like, I miss you like massively already. Whereas I might have spent every hour, every day for weeks with them up to it. Yeah. And I might be thinking, I'm quite looking forward to getting a little bit of space and just being away for a bit. Minutes later, I'm like, nope. But it's kind of almost brain tricking you, I guess, in some ways, that you want what you have, you don't want what you have, and you want what you can't have, and all of this. So
you know what you have when you're not there.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
I mean, look, I've never, honestly, I've never really felt loneliness. So I guess I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but being alone, I like it at times.
It's necessary, right?
It is, but in small doses. I don't like it for a lot. If you said to me, you know what, I'm kind of going away by myself in solitude for a week.
Yeah.
Probably all of the experiences I'm doing, the main thing that I'll be thinking during that alone time will be telling the people around me what happened when I get back.
It's really very obvious in your book as well. I wanted to. Yeah.
But
good. Any final remarks, advices for entrepreneurs, people who want to keep going? I guess that's the invitation today. Keep going. Don't hold back.
What was it? I think it's a Winston Churchill quote. We'll go with that.
Let's go. Yeah.
Success is not final. Failure is not fatal.
Love it.
That's the one from Winston Churchill.
Thank you, James.
And that will take you either, so if you're doing well, you're doing shit. In some ways, neither of them matter.
Thank you.
Appreciate
James.
it. Really
Thank
do.
You, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Op zoek naar vooruitgang? Abonneer je nu op de On Pointcast.